And welcome back to Newsmax Now. We want to welcome to our Monday Newsmax Now Roundtable President of Citizens for Self-Governance attorney Mark Meckler. Also rejoining us, Newsmax Chief Washington correspondent John Gizzi. Thank you both for joining us here on this Monday.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you,
John,
Miranda,
right before the break, we were talking about Rick Perry. Rick Perry also said that he was offended by Donald Trump's claim that Mexicans are rapist, and says that Trump doesn't understand the challenge of strengthening the U.S.-Mexico border. So I'm going to start with you, John. What do you make of his comments?
Well, I think Governor Perry is saying what would be expected of just about any other Republican candidate. If you look at it, with one exception, Senator Cruz of Texas, every other Republican candidate who has addressed Mr. Trump's remarks has been highly critical. One would not expect anything less than that. Now, you can talk about the degrees that they're critical. Governor Perry's signature issue in the past has been border security. I've listened to him when he spoke about boots on the ground as the only answer to the problem of illegal immigration. So this gives him an opportunity to play his strong card, so to speak, without being too harsh on Mr. Trump personally, but disagreeing with his remarks.
Mark,
Governor
what do you
Bush
think?
chose to be a little harsher in his condemnation.
Mark, what are your thoughts?
Well, I would have to say the candidate with the best perspective on border security and how it affects the United States would be Rick Perry. He's got the largest contiguous border with Mexico. And I've traveled a lot in Texas. I can tell you the attitudes on immigration in Texas are more rational than I've heard anywhere else in the country. They deal with the constant flow of traffic across the border. You have to remember at the Alamo, the names inscribed on the wall, those who lost their lives defending the Alamo, half are Hispanic surnames. So I think I would look to Rick Perry as a leader on this issue more than anybody else in the field.
All right, we'll be voting soon enough on Rick Perry and some of the other Republican candidates. In the meantime, they had a big vote in Greece. Let's talk more about that.
Voters rejecting a financial bailout in return for sweeping new austerity measures.
A vote that will send shockwaves around the world.
Varoufakis is saying he is leaving the finance ministry today.
Is Greece going to leave the euro?
But while people are celebrating, the days ahead may threaten the unity of Europe.
Media reactions after Greece's outspoken finance minister resigned only hours after voters backed his call to reject creditors' demands for more austerity in a referendum. A great place to continue our discussion about Greece. Let's start with you, Mark. What are your thoughts about what's going on right now, and how much, as residents of the United States, should we be concerned what's going on overseas?
Well, I think it's interesting to listen to the EU's response. You're hearing from the EU that the referendum was illegal and non-binding. I think that's pretty extraordinary. In other words, an unelected group of bureaucrats in Brussels telling the Greek people what they can and cannot do. I think this does not portend well for the EU. I think the Greeks are probably going to be the first to exit, and that could lead to a lot worse. It could lead to a spiraling financial crisis in Europe, which obviously would affect markets in the U.S. So I think it's something to pay very close attention to.
John, should we be paying more attention to Greece?
Well, we've gradually started paying more attention, and I note that at the White House, questions about Greece and what will happen if Greece exits first the euro currency and then the eurozone are growing almost by the day. I'm sure they're going to dominate the discussion at the Monday session at the White House today. Now, that said, Press Secretary Josh Earnest has always said, without hesitation, the administration hopes Greece will work out its disagreements with its partners and remain both in the Eurozone and in the euro currency. At this point, I would guess that looking at the rules of the EU, they will be out of the euro and probably have to adopt another currency. On the other hand, I don't think they'll leave the Eurozone, or certainly not NATO at this point. And it was a surprise that Mr. Varoufakis resigned as finance minister. He was the driving force for this plebiscite that they had yesterday.
Interesting images, people lining up at the ATMs. Let's take a listen to what Greece's economy minister, Georgios Stekakis, had to say regarding currency in Greece.
You think you could allow people to continue to take out the 60 euros a day?
Well, we think that the data from last week indicate that there is cash availability for a number of days of this week as well.
A few days, but nonetheless, the European Central Bank really is under pressure to provide a bit more capacity.
Obviously, yes.
So with the few seconds that we have remaining, real quickly, Mark, I want to ask you, what are the chances that Greece is going to claim its independence here?
Yeah, I have a feeling that based on economic reality, it has no choice. I think we may see the rise of the drachma, their own currency, going to come back. It's very sad to watch the root of Western civilization collapse before our very eyes.
And John, you real quick in a word, yes, no? What do you think is going to happen?
Out of the euro, remaining in the eurozone, and there'll be the drachma and hyperinflation will follow.
All right, John Gizzi, Mark Meckler, thank you both for joining us here for this roundtable. Always good to have you. Hope you enjoyed your holiday. Still more to come. You're watching Newsmax Now.
Welcome back, and
That's
we
right.
are so thankful that President of Citizens for Self-Governance attorney Mark Meckler and Newsmax chief Washington correspondent John Gizzi joining us for another segment. John, we're working you overtime on this Monday.
Yeah, I said goodbye a little too soon. I was like, oh, wait a minute, we have one more round. Sorry, it's Monday, it's after the holiday. Let's do it again.
Yeah, Roman Catholic leaders in the early voting state of Iowa will call on 2016 GOP candidates this Thursday to follow the teachings of Pope Francis, focus as much on the environment and income inequality as they have in past elections on opposing gay marriage and abortion. Now, the director of the University of Akron's Bliss Institute of Applied Politics, John Green, says that Pope Francis hasn't changed church teachings, but he has given greater salience to social welfare and environmental issues, which has put Catholic Republicans in an awkward position. He certainly is changing the landscape of what we are talking about in this country. So, John, first to you. How do you view Catholic Republicans in this day and age, especially in these early primary states? What is the emphasis right now?
Well, the emphasis is going to be on economics, because remember, many Catholic Republicans are also blue-collar voters. These are the lineal heirs to the Reagan Democrats, as they were known. And I will be most interested to see the analysis and interviews with voters from Macomb County, Michigan, which was always the hub of the blue-collar Catholic voter who was morphing from Democrat to Republican a generation ago and has pretty much stayed there, albeit with a few flirtations. Now, regarding the Pope's encyclical, it is true that this is a controversial new area for the Holy See to get into. On the other hand, it is an opinion by the Pope. It is certainly not a dictate. It is not anything that changes church dogma. That remains absolute. And the church's position, as any church leader will tell you, remain semper idem, always the same, on issues such as abortion and marriage. So I really don't see a conundrum for any Catholic voter who happens to be a Republican.
Well, Mark, I wanted to ask you, I was looking at the 2012 Gallup poll saying that Catholics voted for President Obama 49-48 over Mitt Romney. What do you think the priorities for those Catholic voters? Will it continue to be gay marriage, abortion, or do you think it's more the income inequality and the environment?
I don't think it's income inequality. I agree with John. What it really is the economy. It's really about paycheck issues, whether they're putting the money in their back pocket or it's going to government. And it's the middle class that matters here. That's really where the difference is going to be made. And the middle class is hurting badly under this administration. The idea of higher taxes and giving more away is not going to appeal to them. And if we look at the pontiff's influence on American politics in the recent past, it's not a lot. When you've got leaders of the Democratic Party openly promoting the availability of abortion, government paying for abortion, clearly the pontiff's positions on these issues has never changed, and the Catholic politicians on the left have not wavered on these issues. I think people are a little bit too worried about what the Pope thinks on these issues.
So do you think the Pope's upcoming, let's start with you, John, do you think the Pope's upcoming visit to the U.S., which I believe is September, will overshadow politics?
Oh, it certainly will. And as one who came out to greet Pope Benedict when he came here in 2008, one must remember that whenever the Pope comes, Americans of all faiths, Catholic and Protestant, Jew and Gentile, even non-believers, want to see this very unique world leader who from a very small area, which the Vatican is, nonetheless exerts influence over billions and is always listened to. Yes, I think there'll be even more traffic for Francis than there was for Benedict, and there sure was a lot for him when he came here.
I thought of some really interesting comments from Republican presidential candidate Jeb Bush. He responded to the Pope's call to action saying, "I don't go to Mass for economic policy or for things in politics." Do you think that most Catholics wish that these political discussions would really stay out of the church?
Let's ask you, Mark.
No, I don't.
John, sorry, you can
Mark,
go and
go
answer.
ahead.
I just wanted to bring Mark into the conversation. Go ahead, John, real quick.
Okay, no, I don't think so at all. And you also have to remember, Pope Francis is a Jesuit, the first of that particular order to sit in the throne of St. Peter. And Jesuits are always questioning what is and what happens to be, never to really change dogma, but all to provoke debate and discourse within the church. And I do think Catholics appreciate that and know that that's a part of their faith and certainly a part of the new Pope.
All right, Mark, the last few seconds remaining go to you. Your thoughts.
Sure. Practically speaking, I travel the country. I've been in 18 states since the first of the year. I've spoken to a lot of Catholics and other believing Christians. Never once has the Pope's opinion on these matters come up as something that will be a decisive factor in how people vote. And we're talking about politics here. I think the Pope will make a splash. I think his effect on American political life will be limited at best.
All right, Mark Meckler, John Gizzi, thank you again for joining us here. We promise this is the last Newsmax roundtable, right? Okay.
Mark's racking up those frequent flyer miles.
He is.
18 states since the first of the year. Good
yeah,
job.
wow. All right, still more to come. You're watching Newsmax Now.